Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Perakee Podcast. With me today, I have Ryder Lee. He is the host of Raised by Giants, a podcast I've just recently been introduced to. I was listening to him and is it Ryan Burns on Hero Paranormal, and I was captivated right away. This guy knows his stuff. He brings his receipts. He's got tons of knowledge. And today we're going to talk about MK Ultra, remote viewing, mind control. There's a good possibility from what I heard the other day that psychic spies from China might be stealing our modulation. That's a Red Hot Chili Peppers song.
I love Red Hot Chili Peppers. I've seen Red Hot Chili Peppers in their Stadium Arcadium tour in 2005 or 2006, whenever that album came out. Fantastic show. Red Hot Chili Peppers kills it every time.
I had tickets to that one. I had tickets to the one after, but as I told you, and some listeners may know, I work away in mining camps, and you always buy tickets a year ahead in advance, and then it's like, oh, no, your schedule was switched. So I've twice held tickets to them and have not got to yet to see them.
Yeah, they're fantastic, dude. I saw them in Mars Volga, or whatever. They were the opening band. It was just two bands on that tour. A really good tour.
Yeah, those are the real high pitched guys, eh? The Mars Volta,
the super high,
real screamers.
I had never heard them before I went to that show, and I was like, "Who's the opening band for this?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's Mars Volta." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "All right, well, it's still a good show."
Yeah, they're good, but you need earplugs or to tone it down. Sure. But so as you start wherever you want to, but just so you keep in mind, pretty much most people that listen to my podcast, this would be like their first introduction to any of this kind of stuff. And so yeah, like we're in kindergarten, please, sir.
Awesome. So where this really all started with me was when I first started my show. I just started interviewing people that I thought were interesting, right? And I thought that the secret space program and the super soldier people were interesting. Now, I didn't necessarily believe anything that they were talking about, right? They were talking about going to other planets and fighting aliens in space for 20 years and then being age regressed back to the very point that they were taken. They were taken by the military. They were taken by the CIA. Time travel, advanced technology, med beds, robotics, implants in your head, and all this. So I interviewed a few of those people, and it just wasn't adding up. Things weren't making any kind of sense to me. Like, how can this be possible? We have no technology on Earth that matches any of the technology that they're talking about in space, right? Absolutely none of it. So I started digging deep into the things that they were talking about, because there's a series of events that basically all of them talk about. It starts out with MK Ultra. They're abducted whenever they're a really young kid, which didn't make any sense to me either. How are they just taken out of their bed and their home at a really young age? Which it turns out that that's not the way that real MK Ultra works. Real MK Ultra works is you either volunteer for the program or you're sold into the program, right, by a family member, and it's normally has something to do with a long line of abuse, right? Like Kathy O'Brien, she was sold into the MK Ultra program at a really young age by her father, right? So that's the way that it works. But these people make it seem like they're just taken directly out of their bed at night, and they're taken to a military base in Maryland or wherever, a CIA headquarters base, Langley Air Force Base, and all this. And then they're MK Ultra, they're mind fractured, and then compartmentalization of their brain happens, and then they're immediately taken through a jump room to Mars or the moon to fight aliens for 20 years and then be an age regress all the way back. And they also talk about this project that's called the Stargate Project. And they claim that the Stargate project is a project to open up real life portals, right? Like stargates, like, through mythology of the Sumerian gods and like all
Yeah.
that, like stargates where you can like walk through and go to a different reality, a different planet, a parallel universe, or whatever. So I knew that the bulk of their story was nonsense, right? So then I started researching into what could possibly be real within their story. So then I started researching the MK Ultra programs, and I got a hold of those 149 declassified MK Ultra documents that were declassified by the CIA. And I was reading through all of them, and a lot of things started making sense, right? Because when people talk about the MK Ultra programs, it's kind of the stigma that it just involved hallucinogenics, right? That it just had LSD in it, and they were attempting to use LSD to brainwash people to make them do things. Well, LSD was involved, but there was an array of other drugs that also came out of those programs. Antipsychotics came out of those programs, antidepressants came out of those programs, amphetamines came out of those programs, which is Adderall and Ritalin, right? So those drugs, they were also experimenting with those drugs as well. So it just wasn't LSD and mushrooms, though that it was a big part of it. But what they would do is is a depatterning process, right? Where they would remove normal thinking patterns in the subject's mind, right? Remove common sense, critical thought, and logic from the head. And they would do that through, torture, starvation, and people have the wrong idea of what torture necessarily is. Torture doesn't mean that you're being beaten 24 hours a day, every single day, right? Or you're in really horrible conditions. Torture can be something as simple as, having to, I use this example a lot, but just put your hands on the wall in like a L-shaped position for multiple hours a day, right? And you can only rest for 10 minutes out of the day, right? Eventually, that very subtle action is going to start to break your mind. You're going to start to section off a part of your consciousness into what's termed as an alter, right? Which is multiple personality disorder. And MK Ultra has been known to create DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, and multiple personality disorder. Right. So then after they do the depatterning, they drug you, which again, it can be with an array of drugs, LSD, mushrooms, antidepressants, antipsychotics, Adderall, Ritalin. And then they do this thing that's called psychic driving, where they implant thoughts, ideas, beliefs into the subject's mind. And psychic driving, the official narrative of psychic driving is done with a audio looped message, right? So they'll take a recorder into the area of where the subject is, and then they'll have the subject listen to that looped audio repeated message over and over and over and over and over again until they believe it, right? So then, and no one knows what was on those looped audio messages. No one can, the verified people that's been through those programs, they don't remember what it was because it's just subliminally, given to them. So I'm thinking, okay, well, if they can do that with a looped audio message, why can't they do that with a TV screen? Right? Why can't they?
Disney films. Princess Di in her one book, I remember reading one time, and it freaked me out always after. She said when they were children, when the parents would have parties, whatever, they would have bed knobs and broomsticks on repeat. That's what they watched every time their parents were at that. So she thought there might have been some kind of strange programming in the Disney movies or stuff like that. And I believe those things they're definitely probably doing those. But the thing that I found really interesting about listening to you guys the other day is where my mind goes to it through studying the occult and the esoteric and not practicing, but studying and learning and all these things is I think they've always been able to do this sort of thing through psychic attack and through psychic things, and then maybe through their understandings, if they're Masons or in the Illuminati or whatever, they understand the Hermetic principles, understand how to manipulate your reality and this and that, then they're just bringing technology into it. But I think these things have always been there. And like I say, I think psychics have always been able to implant or put something over. Like when people see the paranormal, there could be three guys. One sees a Sasquatch, one sees a dog man, one sees a gray alien, or, it's whatever screen memory is being put over you. And yeah, well, just look at these screens. It's the same thing.
Exactly. That's my kind of point, is that it's expanded out, and now instead of doing an MK Ultra on an individual basis, they're just doing it collectively. Now that you don't have to be involved in a program, now the MK Ultra device is in your living room, it's in your pocket, right? And that's what's controlling people. So my thought was, well, if they can do it with a looped audio message, which radio came about before TVs and live broadcasts and all that, and also with newspapers and books before that, and I'm like, okay, well, if they can do that in that kind of way, what stops them from just putting some kind of VR goggles on the subject and then making them believe that they lived a completely separate life than the life that they're currently living, right? Because if you've removed normal thinking patterns, common sense, and logic from the person, they're drugged, then you psychically drive them in an array of ways through a looped audio message, a TV screen, or in the most extreme version of this is like a VR type of goggle simulator,
right,
to put you through. You're going to believe that, right? Your psyche can only take so much tension before it breaks. And when you break, it breaks from this current reality, and it makes it to where you can't interpret reality the way that it actually is. So if you're seeing something that it seems very real to you, you're going to believe that what you're seeing is actually real.
Right.
And you're going to misinterpret the situation. You're going to misinterpret reality every single time when you've had these, when you've been depatterned, when you've been drugged, and you're being psychically driven. Right.
Yeah.
And that was my first deep dive into the secret space program and the super soldier asset people. And then I started diving into the Stargate project, because in the 149 declassified MK Ultra documents that was ran by Sidney Gottlieb, which Sidney Gottlieb was the head of the MK Ultra, all of the MK Ultra programs. He was also doing experiments, psychic experiments, ESP experiments, channeling experiments, and then I was like, okay, well, they're doing it all the way back in the early 50s here. That's when these MK Ultra programs were happening, right? And then I was like, okay, well, let's look into this Stargate program, because I knew that Army intelligence and the DIA had a psychic remote viewing psychic spy program that was officially a military SAT program. And I was like, okay, well, let's dig into this. Let's bring these people on my show. So I reached out to a lot of the people that were verified in the DIA and Army intelligence remote viewing program. Now, the Stargate program was just another name for it. It went under different names. It's a very, very convoluted story, but the simplest way to explain it is that every single branch of the military, every single three-letter organization had their hands in doing psychic experiments with ESP and remote viewing and psychokinesis technology. Right. That's just without getting into, I mean, I can get into all the details, but we would be here for a while, just me explaining all of the different facets and how, everything worked. But I'll give you a brief little summary. So SRI which is Stanford Research Institute. It was a part of Stanford University until 1970, whenever SRI split from Stanford, and then they went under a different name in 75. They renamed it as Stanford Research Institute International in 75. But in 73, SRI became funded by the CIA to research psychic phenomenon, psychokinesis, and psychic energetic phenomenon. And they had 2 remote viewers at SRI that was like test subjects, and that was Ego Swan and Pat Price. And there was other ones later on. Uri Geller was a part of SRI as well. So there was a coordinate that was given to Ingo Swan, and Ingo Swan, because they were trying to test to see if remote viewing was a verifiable thing, that if it was real. And this was a part of Project Syndicate that was ran by SRI, that was funded by the CIA. So they were trying to test to see if these abilities are real and can we verify that they're real. So they just started spitting off coordinates to Ingo Swan, right? Like right off the rip. And then he would just view whatever it is on the coordinate, which is coordinate remote viewing, where they just give you a blind coordinate and then you remote view that coordinate, whatever's at that location, like instantly. So they gave them this coordinate that, and before I get into that, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were in charge of this program at SRI. A lot of people know Hal Puthoff because he's involved in the UFO phenomenon now. So Hal Puthoff gave Ingo Swan a coordinate. He remote viewed it. He seen this structure in West Virginia that he felt like was an underground structure. There was a military base in West Virginia. So then that coordinate was given to Pat Price. Pat Price was a businessman. He just went by Pat in the declassified documents. They didn't give his full name, but we know his full name now to be Pat Price. They gave him that same coordinate. He sees the same thing, but way clearer than Ingo Swan. Pat Price is probably, in my opinion, and looking through the documentation of these declassified programs, he was probably the best remote viewer psychic in the world ever. Like very precise details, wind speed, altitude, like all kinds of the surrounding areas, the sky, like everything is all documented in these documents, and descriptions, drawings of the location that he's viewing, like all this incredible stuff. So he remote views almost the exact same thing that Ingo Swan remote views, but in way clearer detail. And then it's given to him later on, and Russell Targ asked him if he can actually view inside of the military installation in West Virginia, and he does, to try and get classified names, classified documentation of what was going on there. So he does. He gets details of code names for special access programs. He gets the names of the generals that are in charge of the base and all this. So then this gets leaked out to Army intelligence, DIA, CIA, even though the CIA was funding the whole project from the very beginning, but it made them open their eyes like, holy shit, this phenomenon is actually real. This is something that is verifiable. How did he use his mind to get into this ultra secret military installation that we're running in West Virginia and get classified information from documents that is deep underground within the base with his mind? How did he penetrate that base to be able to get any of those details? Right? They were blown away. They were blown back by it.
Really scared shitless.
Exactly, because they're like, okay, well, if he can do that, then who else can be doing that? Right? And then there was also information that the Soviet Union was also running that sort of psychic spy program as well. So, and the Chinese were also using children as remote viewers and spies and with psychic abilities and all that. So all of that coupled together, Army intelligence decides to open up their own program, which was called Center Lane. in 1978. That program got shut down before it even really started, and then it got turned into Grill Flame. And then Grill Flame got combined with the DIA, and their first operational target was a missing plane, I believe. It was a missing plane. Now, I'm not for sure if this is the same missing plane that President Jimmy Carter spoke about that on the record. Do you remember that? You remember Jimmy Carter saying that he found that they used psychics to find a missing plane that had downed in Africa, and the CIA
officially said this when it went in office, or?
Well, it was in 95. He said it. So after he was not the president anymore, he was the former president, but he said it in 95 on it. Actually, I might be able to drop the video here because I posted it on TikTok. Do you have the ability to let me to screen share?
Oh, how do you do that? I'm so new to this.
It should be go to participants, click the little, click on participants and then go up to the right and then hit more, I think, and it should be allowed a screen share.
Invite, mute all. Okay. Allow participants to unmute. I don't see anything that says screen share. Ask.
Maybe click on the screen share option. There might be a little arrow above screen share, but if not, it's no big deal. Okay. But I just think that's I'm
dropping the ball.
No, it's all good. But Jimmy Carter basically said that the CIA director at the Central Intelligence Agency used a psychic from California to locate a missing plane, and she gave the coordinates of the missing plane, and then they went and found it exactly where she said that it was. Now, I don't know if this is related to the official Grill Flame assessment or not. I'm still looking into that, but it's still really interesting that Grill Flame's first operational assignment was to locate a missing plane, and then Jimmy Carter talks about it again in 95. So then Army intelligence gets taken off of the you got this.
I got you now on screen share. Sorry, keep going.
No, but that's your screen share. I would need to be able to share it on my screen.
Oh, okay. Okay, you just keep going. I'll mess around with this.
Yeah, just go ahead and exit out of this. Don't worry about it. We'll okay. I can actually just send you the video if you want to just clip it in or edit it in if you want.
Okay.
There should be a little red button at the very top that says in screen share.
Yeah, it's minimized here. I'm just trying to move it over. Make it. Okay. What a hack. Oh, it doesn't have anything on here. Mute.
Up at the top, you go to the very top.
Stop screen share. Okay, okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. We'll stop messing around with that.
Actually, I'll just play the audio from it because I still think that it's really interesting.
Relevant.
Okay. All right, this is President Jimmy Carter in 1995 talking about the missing plane.
The only strange and inexplicable event that has been discussed publicly is that one time we had a small plane go down somewhere in Africa. We needed very much to find out where that plane had crashed, and we were not able to find it by surveillance from our satellites. So the director of the CIA, he was also director of all the intelligence agencies, heard about a woman in California that was a medium. And he contacted her, and she gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. And the next time one of our space satellites went over that area, we located the plane where she said it was.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so then Army intelligence gets separated from the Grill Flame because the funding commission for it thought that the program was being double funded, but when it was just DIA and Army intelligence combined into one program. So Army intelligence got nixed from that program, but they started their own program later on, and then it was decided that Army intelligence should be able to produce more and do more data. So then Army intelligence and DIA's program were both combined once again, and that was turned into Sunstreak. It was renamed Sunstreak, Project Sunstreak. And then in it was either 92 or 93, I'm not too sure on the date because it's just coming right off the top of my head. It was then decided to change the name from Sunstreak to Stargate by Dale Graft, which I had Dale Graft on my show, and he decided to change the name to Stargate because he felt like that it was more conducive to what they were doing and more of the potential aspect of what they were doing. But this whole program was to collect intelligence data on foreign governments, right, during the Cold War. So then the program was supposed to be given back to the CIA in 95. Then the CIA just shut it down and was like, hey, no valuable intelligence data has ever been collected from this program, so we're shutting it down, which is a lie. Why would you keep a program running for 15 to 20 years if it wasn't useful, right? If you weren't getting some kind of information out of it, then why did you keep it going for so long?
Well, I think the only thing, like I said before, like if anybody studies the occult, the esoteric, the Masonry, Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, and is practicing and looking into those things, you know that all of these abilities are true and they're real, and magic and manifestation and all these powers are real. And I would think most of the people that are running most of these things are probably a Freemason or probably in some sort of practices like that. And that's probably why they want to shut it down, because they already know all this stuff is real, and they've been, in covens and practicing these things for a long time. So they would want to make it look like it's nonsense or woo or not worth pursuing, because they don't want anybody knowing what they know, right? Like then have been most likely practicing for generations and generations, right?
Exactly. I think that it was an array of things, because I'm under the belief that nothing happens for just one reason. It was a multi-layered reason. One reason is that they didn't want the public to possibly find out that they were using psychics and remote viewers to collect intelligence data. Another one is that they found a different application, a different use for it, and they couldn't transfer the people in the Stargate program into a new program because that new program was really nefarious, and they couldn't have more people finding out about it. It had to be a top secret program. And another version is that they don't use psychics and remote viewers. They just gave up on the entire program, which I don't think is true. No. Which there's no proof that the government or any of these three-letter organizations are running any kind of or like are using remote viewers or psychic abilities for anything. It's just pure speculation. But reading through these documents, Army intelligence and DIA basically took the big brunt of the force for doing this kind of research and having this kind of program, just like the CIA took a big brunt of the force for doing MK Ultra programs in the 50s, right? So, but there was a lot of other three-letter organizations that picked up after the CIA shut down their MK Ultra program and continued doing MK Ultra experiments. One of those is the Air Force. So, and the Air Force has never been, made to come clean about their experiments in MK Ultra. But then I'm thinking, okay, well, what would be the application of the Air Force doing MK Ultra experiments, right? What would they want to do that for? Now, I just had Dr. David Morehouse on my show, and he thinks that the reason was because enemy fighters and the Air Force, they needed to be tougher in their brain because they were at risk of getting captured by enemy forces, and they could give over information that enemy forces couldn't get from ground personnel. But I think that has evolved once again, just like how everything has evolved. Remote viewing has evolved, MK Ultra has evolved. It's all evolved. And I think that the reason that the Air Force would be interested in the long run in doing MK Ultra experiments is because they can make people believe that they've seen a UFO, right? Air Force in the sky. What else is in the sky? UFOs are in the sky. Aliens are in the sky. Right. So they can make people believe that they've seen something weird in the sky. They can make people believe that they had an alien abduction when they didn't.
Right.
They can do anything that involves mystical things that could be happening in the sky in order to redirect people on the thoughts and ideas of what's actually really happening and real programs that are happening on the planet and what they're really possibly doing in space with the militarization of space. And this is another thing that the super soldiers in the secret space program people talk about is a looking glass technology. I know that you've heard of looking glass technology. Yeah, where they're like, oh, well, there's this technology that the government has. It gives them the ability to see into the past and also see into the future to see, what kind of events are going to happen. And then they restructure their plans based on what the looking glass technology sees.
Well, this is where the Mandela effect and stuff is probably coming from because they're messing or CERN, right? Or both.
Well, what looking glass actually is, and you can look this up, you can just Google it in, put in Operation Looking Glass, and you'll see that Operation Looking Glass is a actual Air Force sponsored program to arm space with a command post with the ability to launch nukes.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know it to that detail.
Yeah, so I mean, they take. That's the problem with this community is they take real stories, real names of projects, and then they just lump in all of their nonsense to it, right, and make it this exaggerated thing that has no bearing in reality.
Like putting things in movies and media so that like putting real projects in movies like Contact and all those movies they say so that like if you actually people do stumble across information or conspiracies, people just like, you're an idiot, that's in that movie, you watch too much TV, you got an imagination. How they implement these actual projects in pop culture or like you say, blow it way out of proportion so people look crazy or incredible. Makes sense.
Exactly, and that's the biggest problem with this community is that very few people actually research the real programs, and that's a verifiable thing that you can look up to disprove the project Looking Glass, seen into the future and seen into the past kind of technology, right? That's very easily verifiable. And the reason that they do that and they make it all exaggerated and fairy tale nonsense entertainment, right? Because that's really what a lot of it is entertainment. And it comes and really that's our fault in this community for doing it that way and not having real facts and real information surrounding real operations and real programs, right? Is that we just tack on our own thoughts, ideas, and beliefs onto it, and then we spew that out into the internet and on shows and then on podcasts as if it's actual fact.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and then it creates a snowball effect of every generation of people, anybody new, just compounds on previous information that was already there. And then the real thing that's happening gets lost in the shuffle, you know? And that's what I really think is going on with this entire ET narrative, UFOs, alien abduction. It's all a cover up. It's all one giant cover up for the advanced technology that we've developed. It's not reverse engineered alien craft. It's craft that we have created from early as the mid 1800s with the Sonora Aero Club in Northern California. They were creating these airships that was using green spinning mercury fuel additive to make their craft lift up off of the ground, right? And then if you go back to all the newspaper articles of that time, you'll see that people were seeing shit in the sky.
Yeah.
Right. And then you fast forward, Walter Bosley has written several books about this and done all the research on that. I just want to give him a shout out there. So then you fast forward a little bit to World War II. Germany during World War II, they were working on the exact same thing with the Glocke Bell technology, which was using a red spinning mercury fuel additive to make their craft lift up off of the ground, right? And
isn't it the venemas and stuff like that in India? Don't they have ponds of mercury and stuff like that? Like they figured underneath them in some of the temples, there's like pools of mercury and this and that, and they figured it again. It had something to do with that. It might be ancient or lost, rediscovered technology. With the mercury's come up quite a few times in my research.
Exactly. I think that it is a old technology that we have just discovered, and if any beings are any physical beings that have this technology that doesn't look like us, there doesn't mean that they're extraterrestrial. That doesn't mean that they're coming from a different planet, right? Whenever you research and you look back through all this stuff, it makes absolutely no sense. It makes zero logical, common sense, or critical thinking, right? In the beginning of these contact experiences, these aliens were telling them that they were from Mars and that they were from Jupiter and all these planets in our solar system. Now it's not Mars anymore. Now it's not Jupiter anymore. Now it's the Pleiadians, it's the Arcturus, it's all these very
Zeta Reticuli.
all these very distant stars and all these distant planets, right? And that doesn't correlate well, right? Whenever you put those two things don't add together. And also whenever you look at the UFO phenomenon in and of itself, some of the very first UFO sightings in the United States. Now I'm just talking about the United States now. I'm not talking about any other countries or through religious text or because I don't think religious text can be taken as actual historical fact. I think it's allegorical, metaphorical, and it's not meant to be taken literally, right?
For sure.
But some of the first cases in the United States were all tin can craft. They're all saucers. They're all saucer technology, like the Battle of LA, whenever they were shooting at that craft that was hovering above LA there in close to Long Beach. They were shooting at that and it was hitting something and was bouncing off. It was like hitting a tin can, like some kind of metal. It was hitting metal and it was bouncing off, right? And then also in the Washington Flap event of 1952, where the UFOs fly over the White House, right? There was a shoot down order that was given for those craft that was flying over the White House. So why in the world, you just got out of the biggest war in history, World War II, and in 45, why would you then risk going to war with an extraterrestrial species?
Yeah. Doesn't seem very sensible.
It's not sensible at all. So, And after all of these events too, Brad, they always come out and say that it has absolutely nothing to do with extraterrestrials or aliens. All of them. There's an Air Force general. There's some kind of military general that comes out. It goes back to Roswell, which they made a bunch of excuses surrounding Roswell. It was an air balloon. It was a crash test dummy and all that. I'm still back and forth on Roswell, if Roswell was an actual crash from some non-human intelligences, or if it was just our craft from a special access program that the people that saw it wouldn't even be aware of what it was, and that's why they think that it was something from off-world, because it was a highly classified craft that we created in a crash. I'm still back and forth on that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm still 50-50 on that whole thing. But then, 52 with the Washington flap, they gave the shoot down order for it. So why would they give a shoot down order if they think that it's extraterrestrial? No one in their right mind, no one that's sensible is going to do that. So if it's not extraterrestrial, it's not aliens, and they've been saying that this entire time, then it only leaves one other option.
Yeah.
And that it's us, and it's our technology, and we've been doing this to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's been the military with their advanced craft this entire time, using MK Ultra, using psychic techniques to make the abductee or the person that's experiencing this, make them believe that it's aliens, something that they can't control, right? If it's aliens and it's something, this fairy tale people coming from outer space and another planet and another star system here, well, there's nothing that we can do about that. How can we stop aliens? They're so advanced. They got highly advanced technology. We can't do anything about aliens. But if it's humans doing it to other humans, and it's our government doing it, it's our military, then we can do something about that. But they're never going to let that come out. They're never going to say that it's us with our they're going to keep blaming it on extraterrestrials and aliens. Yeah. Because it's you can't do anything about that. Yeah. Right. That's been planted in people's minds, right? That we can't stop aliens. Aliens are all powerful. They're so much more advanced than us, and then you look at the advancement of that was my whole point of the tin can craft and the saucer type technology, right? It's not that anymore. Yeah. It's not tin can craft anymore. It's not saucers anymore.
No, it's
evolved.
Yeah. They've definitely evolved, those ones that are all moving within themselves, and the cubes and the, you probably know this one that's using this as a screen for their black ops. This idea reminds me with the MK Ultra and all that. I think it's somewhere in South America, two brothers in a field, and they were abducted or whatever. But I guess the screen memory only worked on the one, and the other one's like, "Oh yeah, it was an alien type person we took in a craft." It's like, no, it wasn't. It was guys in Tyvek suits with a helicopter, and they were like, there was some sound being played or whatever. The one brother saw it for what it really was, right? Yeah. And so that exactly what you're saying exactly reminds me of that story. I don't know if you know that one. I can't remember where I read it or where I've heard it, but I've heard of it a few times over the years.
I'm familiar with the story, but I didn't know that the one brother seen it for what it was. I'll have to look into that and research it. But it's the exact same thing with the Betty and Barney Hill case. Right. I talked about this, several times in 1961. Is that Barney? His first statements was that it was the military, that he's seen military people in military uniforms. Yeah. Right. And it wasn't until after they were regressed, after Betty was regressed, she started saying that it was aliens. And then after she started saying it was aliens, and then Barney was regressed, then he started saying that it was aliens. And then it becomes this big, huge thing about aliens.
Yeah. Right? Who did they bring in to do the regression? Some CIA plant, right?
Yeah, and that's the problem with regressions too. Is regressions the regressionist can implant thoughts, ideas, and beliefs and change the scenario of the regression, right? They just with leading questions, right? Yeah. They could be regressing Barney, and Barney could be saying, "Oh, when we were abducted, I seen a military officer in a military uniform. We were in a military craft," and then literally all to change his perspective because he's in a very suggestible state, right? This is like hypnosis, basically. It's one of the techniques that are used in the MK Ultra programs as well as hypnosis.
Sure.
And all the regressionist has to do is say, are you sure it wasn't aliens? Could it be possible that it was aliens?
Yeah.
That it was some unknown intelligences? And then that switches the perception of the person that's being regressed into that thought. But then it can just be created and expanded upon by that one little suggestion from the regressionist. Very simple to do. You can make people believe whatever you want them to believe in that moment. Right?
Yeah, there's those street guys that do that.
Yep.
You see those guys that are out on the street, or they'll be in the subway and this and that, and they could make people forget where they're going or this or that through the power of suggestion. The mentalist, that's what they're called. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that one guy that will go into a store and buy something and give the cashier pieces of paper, blank pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And then he gets the product without paying for it. Of course, he goes back and returns it, but it's to prove a point that people that are in a very highly suggestible state can be made to believe anything. And that has been the plan from the very jump by the powers that be, is to, for every real story, they create and make up 10 fake stories.
Right.
And then when you get believing in those fake stories, the real story can be disclosed and then brushed right up under the rug and then compiled in with all of the nonsense. And then people don't even realize that the real story was put out there because the distrust in the government and in these institutions has grown to be so large that even if they were to tell you the truth now, people wouldn't believe them.
No.
That's the dangerous part of this whole game, right?
Yeah.
They've done this on purpose. The whole thing has been a plan from the very beginning. The community, the conspiracy community, the alternative community, the UFO community, the alien community, spiritual community has all been a part of this plan.
For sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's even, if you just want to simplify it, not even us crazy people that, are into this sort of thing, or I find are just people that I just don't like TV and stuff like this. And I've spent many years away in remote camps and just YouTube, which used to be way better before 2018 as far as conspiracies and stuff like that. But the terrifying thing with all this knowledge you're dropping is that you got 2/3 to half of adults these days in North America on antidepressants, on anti-anxieties, on antipsychotics, or one of those, if not all of them. And then when you understand beta waves and theta waves and everything, and that basically when you're watching TV or looking at your phone, the waves coming from the TV make you hypnotized in a suggestible state like that. And those drugs coming from MK Ultra programs and stuff like that. So how does anybody even stand a chance of breaking free their mind? I don't know.
Yeah, in researching all this, I actually did a bunch of research into how many people in the United States are actually on some form of prescription medication. And the only article that I could find was from 2014 to 2016. And it said that 48%, almost 50% of the United States is on some kind of pharmaceutical medication. Now, that was almost 8 years ago, right? That number has probably doubled by now, at least. At least the 70 to 80% of people now. If they were to do the study, I guarantee you it would be 70 to 80% of the U.S. population is on some sort of pharmaceutical medication. And I did look up the number of adults on pharmaceutical medication, and it was a newer study, I think from 2020 or 2021, which said that 67% of adults in the United States are on some sort of pharmaceutical medication. And then I looked up how many people on pharmaceutical medication had a diagnosable mental illness. This is where it gets really interesting, right? And it said that 60% of, and now I couldn't find a study that was done with people that were on actual pharmaceutical medication, because they're not going to let that out, because the big pharma wants to, they're not going to be like, oh, okay, the medication that we're giving is causing mental illness, right? Yeah. So I couldn't find any documentation on that, but what I did find was illicit drug users. How many illicit drug users have mental illness that are on illicit drugs? And 60% of illicit drug users has at least one major mental health problem. And I'm like, holy crap. Because if you correlate that to the amount of people that are on pharmaceutical medications in the United States, the numbers almost correlate perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. So then it gets into, well, what is causing the mental health? Is it the drugs? Is it the drugs that they're giving people that's causing the mental health, or is the mental health already there? See, we didn't have all of these diagnosable things before the 90s. Like, there wasn't hardly any of these. There wasn't ADHD. There wasn't, all these SRI types of medications. There wasn't antidepressants. There wasn't antipsychotics. Right now, there was like multiple personality disorder and DID and stuff like that. That goes back far to the mental institutions that were in the United States, which is another really weird thing, right? The mental institutions in the United, they were everywhere, yep. And between the 20s all the way up until some of them lasted even into the 90s.
My dad worked at one. He was a miner like I was, but he got hurt in a mining accident, got his neck broken. And after he worked at one of those as like a nurse or as he wasn't a nurse, but a helper there or whatever. I remember that into the early 90s, and then it closed in 92 or something like that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the thing about those institutions was that you didn't even have to be mentally ill to be put into the asylum. Like, you could be a patient there for just having a cold. You could be a patient there for an array of things. If your husband didn't like you and didn't want to deal with you anymore, he could literally go drop you off at the insane asylum and then never see you again. It was that simple.
Have you ever seen, I think it was my mom posted a while ago, it was like, in the 1880s or 1890s, what could get a woman put into an asylum? And it was like, too much novel reading or back talking, or this, like, the list of things was like, basically, if you don't do exactly what your husband says, you're going in the insane asylum.
And that's exactly what it was. I mean, there's proof and documentation. I've seen it. I've researched some of the insane asylums, and in the patient list and the actual reason for them being a patient in the asylum. And a lot of them were the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen. And it was exactly like that. One of them was just, I think a husband dropped off his wife because she had the sniffles, right? Because she had like a cold, and one was for excessive masturbation. He was a patient there because he masturbated.
But it seems to me like they closed those, and now we all live in the insane asylum. Everybody's on the drugs, and they just took the walls down. It's the whole planet is the insane asylum now. That's what it feels like to me, especially the last few months. And like you said, with the predictive programming and like, I believe we're all co-creators, jointly manifesting, and that's everybody's on TV, everybody's watching Yellowstone on Sunday. It's not gonna be hard to implement something, ideas and thoughts and stuff like that. It's super easy. One thing that you guys really got my goat the other night when I was listening was the Monroe Institute, stuff like that. Because I started last July, no, June maybe. And I got to like phase 3 and I had to back off because I've gone out of body since I was a little kid. I've had tons of weird stuff. I used to have a mantis figure come through my wall when I was 3, 4, or 5 years old, and I would just black out from fear. I've gone out of body since I was a little kid all the time. Happens, I don't know, quarterly at least, like without me trying. I would come out and I would always know I was out of body because you'd walk over to turn the light switch on and you can't because you're a ghost, right? And I would go downstairs or upstairs. I'd be able to see, oh, my parents were watching Saturday Night Live, when I was 8 or 9 years old, and be able to confirm all those things. So I've always been able to do that, but I was interested in the declassified Monroe Institute. They're saying the CIA and the military uses all this, the Focus 12, which brings up the fighter pilots. Side note, I've heard of fighter pilots using the Focus 12 and they're outside of the plane and they can proceed from there. Anyways, that's a side thing there. But what freaked me out was I was getting into a point now where it's like literally lie down and within seconds I could go out while I was doing this. But what started happening was there would be somebody in here, the room with me when I was coming out, and it's dark. My room is dark. And there was someone in the room with me and I could sense it. I couldn't see them, but I could sense it right away. And it was a female. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And this and that. And she was trying to pull me in the dark. Well, it's already dark in here, but like through the wall or pulling, like, come with me, and like holding on to me and pulling me. And I'm like, no way. Whack. And I'd come to like, oh, whoa, back in my body on my bed, like really intensely, like smacking back in my body, terrified, right? Like, oh, what the hell was that? So that Monroe Institute stuff, well, you're going to be way better at explaining it than I am because people probably don't know what the Monroe Institute is.
Well, the Monroe Institute was designed by Robert Monroe, and it was a program to induce out-of-body experiences with hemi-syncing the brain. So, and this isn't anything new. There's been ancient cultures throughout history where they would put giant tubes in both sides of the ear, and then they would play the same harmonic frequency through the tube to try and get the brain to basically come together on both sides so that they can induce some kind of experience. And Robert Monroe designed this program to do just that, to try and induce an out-of-body experience. And Army intelligence and the CIA was very interested in his work, and they actually paid the Monroe Institute. This is in the Girl Flame declassified document. They paid Monroe Institute $2,000 to take their Army intelligence assets to the Monroe Institute to study out-of-body experiences to see if this could be somehow incorporated into the psychic remote viewing program, which there is not any evidence that it went any farther than that, but the CIA and Army intelligence both wrote reports on it, and they're declassified, and I have them. And I think that is very interesting because I think that there's a huge connection here, because also in the SRI documents, which is Stanford Research Institute that we talked about earlier, talks about how remote viewing is classified as different things from different literature, right? In the psychology literature is classified as dissociation, and the parapsychology literature is classified as clairvoyance, traveling clairvoyantly. And and then SRI decided on remote viewing term because it is free from any of the other labels that has been put on it. So it's something new, and it's free from occult literature and parapsychological literature and psychological literature. So I think that these two things are connected because a lot of people that have these innate abilities that are already able to do them, normally they either have it from a very young age like you have, or it's activated within them. And the way that I believe that it's activated with them is through a near-death experience or a out-of-body experience, right? If you're already able to go out of your body and you didn't have any kind of near-death experience, then you already have the ability. But the way that it's unlocked in somebody that where it's been repressed is through a near-death experience. And there's several people that I've talked to, several psychics, very good remote viewers that just had this natural ability. And they'll say that it had nothing to do with their near-death experience or anything, but I believe that it does. Dr. David Morehouse was shot in the head, shot in the helmet during combat. He was a military veteran. He got shot in the head, and then later on, he was talking to his superiors in a special access program that he was involved in, and he told them about his near-death experience, and then he was immediately given paperwork and of the Stargate project, which it wasn't called Stargate project at that time. It was Sunstreak at that time. Now, he doesn't correlate the two, but I do, because I think that is very fascinating. And did you have a near-death experience whenever you were younger?
No, not that I remember. I've just always had, it has to do with these, I got, what a Perakee is I got these very rare palm creases on my hand. So everybody has a headline and a heart line, on both hands. That's 99% of people. I don't have that. My head and heart are one. So there's a Toltec legend that were like a shamanic, mystic type people. And actually the South Americans, once you were 5, you were taken away from your family to go to Jedi school because it's too dangerous. And in Judaism and Islam, they killed you if you were born with these, because you're half jinn. You're half human, half jinn. You're a manifester. You're a demigod. All gods ever depicted in painting or statues have these lines on their hands. Like, it's pretty heavy thing to have on your shoulders. And like, when I was 14, I was told I was a Palladian by some lady in a hair salon. I was here to save the world. I just interviewed a guy that has these same lines on their hands. Same thing. He's like, we're here to save the world. We're the 144,000. We're the Elohim from the Bible. So it's pretty heavy stuff. So I'm born with these things, but I think my thoughts, like with them using psilocybin and LSD and all those things, is maybe to open people psychically, and then they can get at them too, right? Even like the above and beyond the torture, you're opening the doors of perception and the windows. Everybody has these abilities. Everybody has them. But most people, you're just locked in your 9 to 5, and you're told what reality is from the TV and by your kindergarten teacher, and what's ghosts aren't real and all these things aren't real. So you're stuck vibrationally. And then it's, people do acid and mushrooms and stuff in high school, and I think lots of people are opened up that way. Thank God not through MK Ultra, but I definitely think that's how and why they were using those things, is to open up people psychically, and then they could get at them and screen memory them and all those sorts of things, right?
Absolutely. That's the easiest way to program somebody with a false narrative, a false belief, a new idea, or something that's completely not real. And that's the connection that I have found as well, because to take this back to the secret space program and the super soldier assets, all these people claim to come back with, after they're magically age regressed and time traveled back to the very point that they were taken, most of them all claim to have some sort of ability, right? Psychic ability, telekinesis, remote viewing, right? And connecting the MK Ultra programs to the Stargate Psychic remote viewing programs, I believe that these abilities were a byproduct of MK Ultra. They didn't know in the beginning that using LSD, fracturing and compartmentalizing the brain would unlock some sort of psychic ability, intuitive ability, astral projection, remote viewing, or anything, but it became a byproduct of that. Right. And that's what I think that the programs turned into after they shut the Stargate program down. The CIA's MK Ultra program had already been shut down for 20 years by the time that the Stargate project was shut down. But I think, now I could be wrong, this is just pure speculation here. No evidence, no proof. It's just my thoughts and my ideas going through researching all the programs and putting everything together. I think that they opened up a new program that, like I was mentioning earlier, that was way more nefarious and way more intrusive upon the public, right? Because remote viewing has a bunch of different applications. There's so many different ways to remote view. SRI was studying like 5 to 7 ways that I've seen in the documents that I have. Right, one is CRV, one is transatlantic remote viewing over a long distance. The third one is remote telekinesis with the ability to move an object while you're from a distance, right? And another one is remote influencing, where you can psychically get into somebody's head, implant thoughts and ideas and beliefs to them remotely. And another version of that is like remote control and outbounder exercises where they would remote view a certain target, see sort of quasi see through the target's eyes to see surroundings and different things. So you're basically, it's kind of like a walk-in, a spirit walk-in, where you would take your consciousness and put it into the other person's consciousness to be able to see exactly what they're seeing. So there's so many different applications for remote viewing. And I think that this program was combined with the MK Ultra program and the remote viewing psychic spy program, and it evolved into a remote influence, remote control type of program to be able to influence people to do things, to believe things when under normal circumstances they wouldn't.
Right.
And this could also be involved with psychic assassins. It could be involved with remote controlling some person to commit a crime, commit murder, shoot up schools.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just going to say.
All of these things is very possible, and I think that that's what the program evolved and turned into. And there is proof of that in the Project Spellbinder, which is a project that was ran by Sidney Gottlieb to mind control an individual to assassinate Fidel Castro. Okay. And the project kind of fell through, but there's theory and speculation that Oswald was the person that the CIA was going to brainwash and control in order to assassinate Fidel Castro. And then they flipped it, and then they turned it to assassinate JFK, right? Supposedly, right? There's so much stuff with the JFK assassination. That's not me saying that I think that Oswald killed JFK alone. I'm just talking about the speculation in the theory here is that the CIA was involved to brainwash Oswald and maybe even take the fall for killing JFK. But who really knows? All those documents haven't been declassified. But to my critical thinking, my thought, my theories, I think that it evolved, and that's what it evolved into. And then I think that it evolved once more, and they completely took humans out of the equation. They were like, okay, well, we can't have these humans being involved in this and getting into people's heads, making them do things, because when humans are involved, there's always the chance of, whistleblowers, people coming out and saying that these programs are real, and then it becomes a big, huge problem for us. So we need to figure out a way to do this without having humans involved. So then they turned that remote psychic, remote influence, remote control program into a technology.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, because it's humans are fallible. They could have changes of heart. They could be manipulated themselves through Russia or China or I think you hit the nail on the head there with that one.
And and there's proof of that too. There's V2K technology. There's patents for V2K. There's patents for controlling the symbiotic nervous system of human beings on the planet. And this all ties into space and what we're doing in the militarization of space. I mean, of course, some of that technology is on the ground, but the easiest vantage point would be from space, right? If they had technology in space or even on the moon, because Lyndon B. Johnson to the Democratic caucus in 58 said that space is a superposition. He said that from space, you can control everything. You can control the weather, you can control the tides, you can basically control human beings on the planet from space. And then 4 years later is the Operation Looking Glass by the Air Force. The Air Force was also running test flights for NASA. And, they're doing immediately after LBJ said that to the Democratic caucus, they started doing it.
Yeah.
They started militarizing space.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole cover up is basically for, is to make it to where you're not looking in that direction. You're not looking at it from a grounded perspective. You're looking at it from these wackadoo conspiracy thoughts and ideas and these fairy tales about Mars and living on Mars for 20 years and underground bases on Mars and all this stuff, when the real operation is way closer to Earth. And the people that know about this don't or won't talk about it.
Right. It's just exactly like I always say to people with the whole QAnon thing right before the events of the last 3 years was like a huge thing, look at all these wing nuts, look what they believe, this not to pitch conspiracy theorists in it. Well, we're already in a bad light or a negative light or tinfoil hatters. But I thought it was just too good a timing that they had that big thing. It all falls on its face like everybody knew it was going to. And then now you have something to really be concerned about, right? And it makes the conspiracy people lose all credibility now for sure, right before all that such and such happened, which I'm not going to mention because I've already had some episodes yanked.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Q thing was a multi-layered thing as well. It was not only a disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theory, but it was also a stand down operation, right? To get everybody that might have been pissed off about what was happening in 2020 to not do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that whole other side of the spectrum was all into that.
Yeah.
They were all about it. Right.
Yeah.
And the stand down operation was that we have this handled. Yeah. We're going to take care of you. Sit back. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We're going to
Daddy
handle
Trump's got it. Yeah, Daddy Trump's got it. He's coming with the Navy. He's coming to take them all away in a boat. We're going to be hanging them all. Yeah.
They're on the Guantanamo, bro. They're all getting arrested. And that made people not want to do anything about the circumstances and the measures and the taking away of rights and freedoms that were, it could have been way worse. It could have been way worse in the United States, and you're in Canada, so not too sure how it was in Canada, but it could have been like other countries, like the UK. It could have been like Australia.
Right? Dude, we're like Australia is number one for oppression. We're number two, man. It's brutal here. You saw the truckers protest and all that, right? Like people trying to even donate money, and they were shutting down their accounts just for donating money. They're not even at the protest, right? Like huge infringements on rights and stuff. It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
But if the United States would have been the people to do that, which
most likely
it was never going to be. It was never going to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Because they knew that they couldn't get away with it, and there would be a huge collapse before they wanted it to collapse, right?
Yeah.
It's a scheduled thing. They got the whole plan all like freaking mapped out, dude. And they're not going to let that happen in the United States because they know until they want it to happen. Now it's coming. It's coming, but it's not going to be premature. So if that would have happened in the United States, it would have been over, done.
Yeah.
Because every other country would have followed suit right along with the United States. Because whether people like it or not, and whether people think it or not, the United States is still looked at as the one of the last standing superpowers of the world. Everyone looks to the United States on what direction to go with their society, right?
Yeah.
So if the United States would have stood up and done something about it, then it would have been over. It would have been done. But we didn't. And it was designed that way for us not to. That's why they paid us. That's why they gave us double the amount of checks, to double the amount of money that we would have gotten working a regular 9-to-5 job, right? That's another stand down operation. But in Australia, they didn't get checks. UK, they didn't get checks, right? So that's why there was all those protests and all that uproar in those other countries, because they were legitimately losing their job and not having any money to fall back on. Right?
Yeah.
If they would have done that here, it would have been over.
Yeah.
Done. People would have been super pissed off, and it wouldn't have been about George Floyd, right? That whole thing. It would have been about everything else that was happening, right?
Yeah.
It was a misdirection.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to like nothing happens that that they're not at play with it. Whether you're getting to these UFO sightings now and that all coming out, or them releasing, the CIA used these Monroe Institute techniques and methods and this and that. Like, they're not going to let you have it unless they've manipulated it to their advantage somehow. That they want people starting to be psychically open so that they can attack them or assimilate them psychically or something like that. Like, I don't trust for a minute that we're allowed anything or any information that isn't controlled by them, that they're not holding the pawn right by the head.
And that's the whole point of the medication. That's the whole point of pharmaceutical medication. I mean, what do they give to your child whenever they diagnose your child in school with ADHD? They give you Adderall, give them Adderall or Ritalin.
Yeah.
Those came directly from the MK Ultra experiments.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about dumbing us down and taking common sense and critical thinking so that we are more encouraged to believe nonsense.
Exactly.
And to believe the most exaggerated story about fairy tales and alien abductions and contracts with aliens, so that we don't take responsibility or rise up against the real forces that are actually behind this, which are humans doing it to humans. That's what all of this is. And people don't want to think that. They don't want to think that way, right?
Well, it's not as fun. It's not as fun. It's not your entertainment. It's not as crazy. But this is critically thinking, like you say, the most logical explanation for it. It's the simplest answer is always usually the real one, right? Like that's
and people get pissed off whenever I tell them that. I've had so much blowback and so many people getting angry with me whenever I talk about that stuff, because again, the indoctrination is so deep, and they think that they are believing the right thing because they think that the government has been covering this stuff up for decades and decades, revolving around the alien stuff, revolving around the UFOs. They think that the government has been covering up the existence of alien life for decades, right? When the cover-up is actually the cover-up.
Yeah. It's the double blind.
Yeah. It's the double. They've hit us with the double, and it's so difficult to get that across to people and have it make logical sense, because again, they're so encompassed in this entertainment, and they think that the exaggerated part and the exaggerated story is the real story, because they 9 times out of 10, they're not happy with their own life.
Yeah,
They're not centered in a good environment. They're in a shitty situation. So therefore they think that something extravagant is happening and they want to believe
then you can
that
blame your shitty
something
life on it.
exactly. That's
Did you
exactly
see
what it
that
is.
Mike Myers one with the Illuminati Mike Myers one that came out in the last year?
The Pantaveret, I loved it,
And
dude.
the Pentaveret when they're riding in the van and then she looks over at the real conspiracy nut guy and she's like, "You ever think you're just a really lonely person? That's why you're into all this stuff." I'm like, that hit the nail right on the head. Yeah, it struck deep with me because I've been in this stuff for years, but I consider them. I don't believe any of them. Like I said, it's been a form of entertainment when I'm extremely lonely away in the Arctic or northern Ontario or northern Vancouver Island. You're out in the bush, and I don't like sitcoms, and I don't really care about football, and I don't really, so that
Oh
was always
no,
my form
absolutely.
of
Like,
entertainment.
exactly. And as long as you see it as entertainment, there's nothing wrong with it, right? I'm not saying don't listen to all this stuff. I'm just saying just be logical and
Critical.
critical of it, just like I was of the secret space program and the super soldier asset people. Like I still listened to them, but I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
Right? I can still find stuff interesting and entertaining. It's like watching a movie, right?
Yeah.
You know that watching a movie that those people on there aren't real, right? You know that they're actors, but
Yeah.
you still watch it because it's entertaining to you.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how we should really view this community, but the community has just gotten so out of hand. But I see that there's a kind of a switch going on, right? And
Okay.
there's not so much experiencers so much anymore. That I think it's kind of flipped. It used to be the researchers were in the spotlight.
Okay.
Back in the late 90s and the early 2000s, it was a lot of researchers, like real
Or
deep,
Bell days.
yeah, real deep, hardcore researchers. And then it shifted around 2012 to 2015.
Yeah.
It shifted to experiencers, it shifted to this exaggerated fairy tale alien stories, traveling in space, being abducted, and all of this nonsense. And then I feel like that's fading into the background now. And now it's going to be more research based.
So you're saying you think it's coming back to a research based, factual based, which is, yeah, God, I hope so.
Yeah, I think people are tired of unproven claims, like people just coming out and making stuff up. Because, as dude, digging into this community and the people that are involved in this community, when you research their background and actually consider what they're talking about, you realize that they're frauds, dude.
Yeah.
Almost all of them, every one of them.
That
Bob
Corey
Lazar.
Goody, he was the Mars and back guy, right? Like that guy was totally a fraud.
Corey
I knew
Good
that the second he opened his mouth.
Yeah, he came out and said that he had a court case. There was a public deposition that was released that he said that he made everything up.
Yeah.
Made up the 20 bag program, the Dark Fleet, Anshar, like all these people, and people still aren't aware of that. People have no idea that that was released, but it's there. Like, look it up. Look up Corey Good deposition, and you'll see.
Yeah.
Watch the third video. The third video is crazy. There's 6 of them.
Yeah.
There's 6 Corey Good videos. The third one has the most information about him talking about that he's never been to space before. He made up the 20 and back program, that Anshar or his meditation practice, whenever he led people to believe that there were physical beings from the inner earth and all this stuff. And it's so unfortunate when you look into all these people, dude, because it's been a huge CIA infiltration into the community. And if you take away all those people, right, if you take away the CIA infiltration of the community, like To the Stars Academy with Blink-182 singer,
Move on, all of them.
you take away the Lou Elizondo, you take away Rick Doty, you take away the people that was a part of that Navy ship, the Nimitz people. You take away Stephen Greer, which I absolutely 100% believe is CIA controlled opposition. I actually had David Oates, which is a reverse speech analysis person that reverses people's speech to reveal the truth and to see if they're actually telling the truth. Because the theory goes that if what you're saying frontwards matches what you say backwards, then you're telling the truth. And he did this on everyone in the UFO community, and there was only one person, well, maybe two people that he did on my show. Now, I don't know if this is out of all the people that he's done in the UFO community, but out of the people that he did on my show, only two of them were telling the truth. Everyone else was lying. So Stephen Greer, his backwards speech said CIA several times.
Oh, okay.
Over and over and over again. CIA.
So is this a rhythmic thing or something? Like, how does that work?
Well, he's the father of reverse speech. He's the one that basically created reverse speech. I know that you've heard of that Led Zeppelin song, "Stairway to Heaven." If you play it backwards, it gives satanic messages. He also did
There's
that.
a tool shed where he tortures us. Oh, sweet Satan, oh, sweet Satan. I've known about that since I was like 14.
Yep, and he
played that on the internet.
He played that on my show, and his theory is that the subconscious mind will come forward, and the subconscious mind always tells the truth. Right. So the subconscious mind is being played backwards, and this conscious mind is being played forwards.
Oh, right, yeah.
So you'll get the subconscious mind, which is the truth, played backwards, and if it's the truth that you're telling forwards, the backwards speech will complement the forward speech.
Okay.
But if not, then it reveals the lie.
Okay.
So he did this on James Gilliland. He did this on Carrie Cassidy. He did it on Bob Lazar. On my show, he did it on several, Willie Strieber, and a few others. I can't remember the rest of them off the top of my head. If people are interested, go to my channel and check that out. But the only person that was telling the truth, that complemented what they were saying forwards backwards, was Travis Walton.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, not even Bob Lazar, though, eh? Oh, well.
No.
I was hoping. I had my fingers crossed, but yeah. No, Travis is cool. I've heard his interview on Rogan. Well, I've known all about him for years, but I liked when he was on Rogan there, right? Like, he's just a down-to-earth guy, and just a, a logger or whatever. No reason to make any of that up or no advantage, especially back then, right? Like, it's not like it is now.
Yeah, there's crazy, and people have investigated into Bob Lazar's claims. My friend Stephen Cambion from Truth Seekers has done many shows on Bob Lazar and his background and everything, which I'm not, going to be able to relay the information perfectly. So if people want to get more information on Bob Lazar, check out his channel. But basically what he's put together is that Bob Lazar was never a scientist. He has no backing as a scientist. He has no degrees from any of the places that he said that he has degrees from. His pictures not in any of the college yearbooks that were distributed. And I know people think that college yearbooks don't exist, but they do exist in some people, and they are out there. And nobody has a picture of Bob Lazar in their yearbook from the year that he said that he graduated from these universities. He's not mentioned in any of them. His name's not in any of them. All right. So if you take the theory into consideration that, oh, well, the men in black and the government just came in and wiped all of his records and all that. Well, did they also go into everyone's attic in their house and take his picture and his name out of their yearbooks?
No, they're just screen memorying all the researchers. That's all.
But it's really interesting and really fascinating. All the big names in the community are liars, frauds, hoaxsters, and very little of their information is factual information. And I'm sorry to be that bearer of bad news to people, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way that it is, and in exactly the same way with UFO and alien people. I mean, these people are saying that we're going to get disclosure every year.
Yeah.
It's never
Yeah.
happened, right? And they take money from people to say that they're going to create some kind of technology or create a freaking hover car. I mean, David Wilcock has said that he's going to create a hover car by 2040, and it's taken all this money to create a hover car. Stephen Greer has said several times that he was going to release free energy devices, and that he needed money to create free energy devices. And then people donate thousands and thousands of dollars to him, and then he never creates a free energy device.
What have you heard about what, like, the big one right now is this Randall Carlson, and then the plasmoids, new technology, for alternative fuels for vehicles and stuff like that. And then they said they filmed it with Rogan, and it's too controversial, and he won't release it. What have you heard about that, or what do you know about that?
Oh, that Randall Carlson filmed an episode with Joe Rogan and he didn't release it?
No, Randall Carlson was on talking about his sort of stuff like that, archaeology, but he towards the end said there's this new technology and the guys have been hiding, for their safety, and it'll be an alternative fuel source. They've been working with Mazda and yada yada. And so Joe says, well, you're gonna have to come back on. This is a whole separate episode. Okay, yeah. So apparently they shot it late last year or earlier in this year, and everybody wants to know what is this new technology. It has to do with plasmoids or something along those lines. And he won't release the episode. They filmed it apparently with the guy who's the inventor of it, and such and such. And Joe just said it's too controversial. He's not releasing it at this point right now. I didn't know if you heard anything about it.
I hadn't heard of that, but I did. I did know that Stephen Greer went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe took down the episode with Stephen Greer. Now, Stephen Greer will tell you that it was because, the powers that be don't want disclosure coming out. But I think Joe Rogan found out that he's a huckster and a fraudster, and he took the episode down. Right. So, I mean, it's a lot of regurgitated nonsense. I mean, people have been talking about free energy devices for decades now. Right. Where is it?
Yeah.
Show it to us.
Yeah.
So far, no one has shown any kind of free energy device. There hasn't been one patent created that's verifiable that you can look up and see that there's a free energy device. And they always keep referring to Tesla. Tesla had free energy devices before, and this is a duplication of Tesla technology. I mean, that's what Stephen Greer is doing right now. He's getting donations to create a documentary about free energy. And Stephen Greer has been talking about free energy since like 2002. He just regurgitates the same thing over and over and over again. Every one of his new documentaries is the exact same thing that he's talked about previously.
Yeah.
He gets, I think he's raised almost $500,000 right now for this documentary that probably takes less than $80,000 to make.
Yeah. Pretty smart guy.
yeah, but then when you look at it and it's like, well, why are these people even popular, right? Why is Jeremy Corbell even popular? How did he even get into talking about UFOs and aliens? He was a yoga instructor before,
Okay.
or martial arts instructor before. He taught, I think he called it like interdimensional yoga or something. I don't even know, dude. I don't even remember what it was, but then he just blows up out of nowhere and then like hooks up with George Knapp, and then they create this documentary about Bob Lazar, and like all these people, they just pop up out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden everyone's listening to them. It makes no logical and common sense other than they're being pushed by an agency. They're being pushed by a 3-letter organization. That's the only conclusion. I couldn't do that if I wanted to,
No.
How can could I release the a classified information?
No.
Hell no, I couldn't.
No.
I would be in trouble. But yeah, these people can just put out footage from a naval ship and get the naval ship logs that are classified information and release that and release all this UFO footage.
Yeah.
I would be in prison if I did that.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
But yet,
100%.
zero consequences.
100%. Yeah, it's just a psyop again, a psyop on a psyop, right? Like they're not going to let us have anything that they don't want us to have unless it's to manipulate us in some form or another. But
Yeah. It's unfortunate, and that's just my thoughts and my theories and my ideas behind it. And whenever you research into these people, you research into the topic, you realize that it's just a bunch of regurgitated nonsense that's been going on forever and ever, and then it just becomes popular again, and then it dies down, then it becomes popular again, and new people come up, and then they add on their stories to it, and then it becomes popular again with a little twist. I had Chris Albeck on my show, and he's done research into all of the stories from ufology, tracked it all the way back thousand years, right? All of the stories that we talk about today have been happening for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
All of them. Crash retrievals have been happening since the freaking early 1800s.
Right.
There's a story of crash retrievals. Aliens have apparently been crashing for freaking hundreds of years. Why? Why have they been crashing for hundreds of years? So we just get regurgitated stories because we think that something more is going on, right? And they just get recycled through every generation, right? The AI stories, the alien stories, and it just gets a little twist that's been put on it, and then it gets a whole new life. And again, it dies down, and then a few years later, boom, it pops right back up with somebody new.
That's why I brought you on, brother. When I listened to you the other night, you brought some common sense, some logic, and you're not killing everything like you say. But I really dig what you're saying. Everything you're saying makes a ton of sense to me. The simplest answer, but I mean, I am an adept. I have no control over psychic abilities, but I've lived a strange and paranormal life, and I know there's dimensions, and I know there's a psychic internet out there that we can all plug into, and I know you can go out of body, and I know you can influence and manipulate your realities. I know, but maybe just like you say, again, they're trying to keep us away from that we all do have these abilities and can unlock these abilities, and the only way they're gonna let you is if they're the ones, out with their thumb on top of you when you're unlocking them, right? Like through all these pharmaceuticals or television or the 5G wireless network.
Yes, sir. That is how it's done. And I also believe in all of those things as well. I believe in the astral realm. I believe in out of body experiences, near death experiences, psychic abilities. It's just all been blown out of proportion to be something that it's not, And that's all that I'm, really trying to do is dig down deep into these different topics and really get to the bottom and the root of all of them. And that's what people really don't want to do because it bursts their little compartmentalization bubble, their little echo chamber of thoughts and ideas that they've been led to believe by somebody else.
Right? Or the revenue stream too.
Or money. Yes, money is
a lot of people.
Money is a very big motivator for people to make up and create crazy, exaggerated, unprovable, zero evidence stories.
Yeah.
Right? They've been doing that for forever now. I mean, Linda Moulton Howe has been caught selling and putting out fake alien pictures for years now, and so it's like, I don't think it's that kind of stuff is ever going to end because it's just so steeped within the mythology and the creation of this community. There's always going to be somebody willing to believe, and I don't blame them for believing it. I believed it once too, so I'm not blaming people or being mad at people or telling them that they're wrong, right? I'm just, coming at it from my perspective and my evolving nature and my research and my study into the topic and what I've discovered now, right? And hopefully it can save some people some time. You
That's
know,
for
that
sure.
they don't have to go through that that whole nonsense, disinformation, misinformation stuff that's balked in the middle of all this stuff. So yeah, thanks, brother. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, everybody. Tell them where they can find you. I love that you bring your receipts, you bring critical thinking, common sense to what my passion is. Anything spiritual, paranormal, conspiracy minded. You seem to be, down to earth, facts only type of person that seems trustworthy. And so, tell the people where they can find you. 'Cause I'll definitely be following you every episode from now on.
Thanks so much, brother. Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Raised by Giants, on all podcast platforms at Raised by Giants, on Rockfin at Raised by Giants, Odyssey, Rumble, and on Instagram at Raised by Giants Pod, and Twitter at Raised by Giants 8. Thanks so much, brother. Appreciate your time this evening. Wonderful conversation.
Yeah, stay on the line. I'm just gonna. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming back, and we'll see you next time.